Howdy! We're the Five Fantastic Aggies, and today we're going to be talking about the contrast between Of Miracles and Men and Miracle on Ice. And Joaquin's going to start us off by talking about the emotions that the Soviets felt.
Yeah, so while watching the documentary called Miracles of Men, the Soviet athletes had a lot of interviews, and they expressed many different emotions throughout the interviews. These include the top ones that I took away from it included number one, pride, pressure, fear, frustration, and humiliation. They experienced a lot of pressure due to the fact that they were winning consecutive Olympics, the hockey team, and they also whooped on the Canadians and they whooped on the NHL All-Stars. So they had a lot of pressure on them to continue to dominate in the hockey world, not only as a sport, but for the actual Soviet Union. And so those were the main emotions that were, well, I can elaborate on this one too, humiliation. So once they went to the Olympics in 1980 and played the United States, they lost, obviously, and that brought them a lot of humiliation because, you know, they were winning and everybody looked up to them and they felt like they had failed their country. So those are the emotions that the Soviet players had.
And then I'm going to talk about the 7 constructs of emotionally intelligent teams, which ones were present and absent for the Soviet team. And the first one I saw that was present was conflict resolution and stress tolerance. And so conflict resolution, you could say that was present. And an example of this was when Tikhonov substituted Traikic out at halftime after a single mistake of missing the one goal to put the U.S. hockey team to tie the game. And so he subbed out Traikic, and the whole team didn't really say anything. So, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Well, they didn't say anything because they were fearful. You know, that was one of the emotions that they experienced. They feared the coaches, feared disappointing them, and they feared of questioning their authority because they were taught as Soviets to just be quiet and do what they're told. And so they really didn't have a say in that situation. Otherwise, if they were on the other side, the Americans probably would have said, hey, no, keep him in, just let him do his job, you know. I think that kind of messed with it, but...
And then another one was emotional awareness. I said that was absent because once the U.S. team went ahead in the third period, the emotional momentum that they had was just too insurmountable for the Soviet team, and they ended up losing. That's all I got.
Okay, I'm going to be talking about stress tolerance and identity for the team of Miracle, the movie. The team's emotional state before the conditioning drill. To give you context on the conditioning drill, Coach Herb wanted to do this suicide drill after they had lost a game that they shouldn't have and kind of push their limits. The emotional state before the drill was frustrated, embarrassed, division between all the team players on the U.S., fatigue from playing a game that they should have won, irritation and confusion by the coach and resisting his way of teaching before that game, and uncommitted to the team that they were on. The emotional identity shift that occurred after completing the suicides, when Coach Herb said that they were done and could go home, was that the suicides changed the players' mindset on whose team that they are. Because before, when they introduced themselves, they would say the team that they played for in college. And emotionally, they were exhausted. But after that player said that he played for the United States of America, it showed that he had pride for his team and a shared purpose for the players. And isolation turned into unity, and frustration turned into determination. The identity shift was that they stopped seeing themselves as individuals and or college rivals, and started seeing each other as one team. The suffering of losing that game and the suicides created a bond. 2 components of stress tolerance development. One is physical adaptation, and the other is physiological. The physical one is exposure to extreme physical stress, so actually going up and down and doing the suicides, and because it passed them from what their comfort zones were, and it trains them to feel like they shouldn't quit when stuff gets hard. And then the other one is mental and emotionally and shared adversity. So going through the punishment together creates a bond. when one player struggles, the group has to struggle and get through it together. And you can see this at the end of the exercise, and the players are helping each other up. And one downside of stress tolerance, if it's misapplied, is if people are ignorant to the warning signs and to stop for like the well-being of yourself. Always thinking to push through can lead to physical injury and emotional exhaustion. I think that, in my personal opinion, Coach Herb almost did do this with the players because they got pushed so far that like the players were throwing up and just like totally like far past well. And you can see this as the Craig Patrick, the assistant coach, could kind of sense this and was like making sure, like, are you sure you want me to like tell them again to go and run? But thankfully that player stood up for his team and knew what Herb wanted all along for the team to become a family unit.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about the coaches and comparing them to each other. So first off, I'm going to talk about their strategies. So for Coach Brooks, their motivation strategy. So for Coach Brooks, you know, he used suicide. So if you played the game, you know, to your all and give it your all, then they don't have to do suicides. Along with if they work hard, they also get to stay on the team. And then obviously getting to play in the Olympic Games. So, you know, when they were in that game and he was threatening to pull one of the players because he had a deep bruise, he was like, no, you're not going to pull me, like I'm going to play in the game, I'm going to finish it out. And he was like, you know, got him wound up so he'd obviously be more aggressive on the court. And then Tarasov, he wanted to create a new game, you know, came up with unorthodox training, you know, no ice, weight rooms, you know, kind of some unhinged weightlifting in my opinion. And then the fear of failure, which I will talk about again later. And then his daughter states that he was everything to his players, so a psychologist, a coach, a father, and a mother, and that creates endless trust, so that obviously motivated them to want to win, you know, for their coach, but also for themselves. And then he sets high standards and stated that foreign hockey actually drove them. And then Tikhonov, you know, obviously he was a very, like, head-fast coach, so he, you know, wanted to win, you know, it was all based on numbers. And so he had intense training, which he kept them in camps for 11 months, which I'll also talk about later. And then obviously he used public criticism. And then the coach's effectiveness, he used fear versus vision. So for Herb Brooks, he used the boys' fear of getting cut from the team to give them a reason to give it their all. So in both practices and games, which this caused the boys to grow into a team that they later described as a family. When 4 boys, I think it is, goes to Coach Brooks and, you know, is mad because he brought back, you know, somebody that he eliminated at tryouts. This helps moving forward by allowing them to work together and win against the Soviet team later on. And then Tarasov, you know, he had a vision of creating a new way that hockey is played. So he invented unorthodox training methods. So he would push the players to train for hours and hours on end. And then Tikhonov, like Joaquin stated, very disciplined, like very good representation of a Soviet coach. He used numbers to coach, intense training, pushed players mentally and physically. Player states that he was like a guy with a whip in a plantation, and then training camps for 11 months, no leaving, no time for families, no time for kids, and no time for holidays. And then which coach fostered collaborative intelligence more efficiently and why? In my opinion, is Coach Brooks, because he knew what each player was capable of and how hard to push them to create them to be their better self. And then he watched film, talked to coaches, talked to scouts about each player, and he pretty much built a team before, you know, they even walked in the gates for training. And he built a team not only based on work ethic and personality, but also EQ. He didn't even look at anybody's skill. It was stated that there was people training or trying out that were a lot better than some of the kids he took, but, you know, he stated it was not based on skill, it was based on, you know, emotional intelligence.
I've got modern context, so I use the company I won in the Corps of Cadets. The challenges we face are like low recruitment and retention, and we have a cultural problem right now where not everyone is like united under the same vision, because we get a lot of transfers into the outfit from other places, and also the leadership isn't native to the outfit. So you have people who've been like in our company for 4 years and people who've been in 1 year, and they just try to bring a lot of things from, you know, where they came from that like maybe we don't do or something like that. And so there's just a cultural mismatch there. I'd say the emotional intelligence weakness here is low social responsibility, because you have a lot of competent people who are really good at their own thing, whatever they do, whether it's like Army or Marine Corps or like their internships, or we have people on like the lacrosse team, things like that. But people don't really want to spend like extra time and resources into things like recruiting and things like taking on extra responsibility in the outfit. So a film lesson learned was, I always thought about how their team in the film, the American team, they were able to build a really strong sense of shared purpose. And this is seen, to call back to what Reagan said about the suicides, this is seen right there when they're saying like, oh, they represent the USA, it becomes bigger than just like an individual thing, or it's bigger than just playing hockey, you know, because of what they represent and because of the shared purpose that they have. So the application is that you have to really build a shared identity, and that starts with leadership, you know, saying this is important, and they need to weave that into the training plan, and they need to make their members feel like they are valued, and they need to reward hard work and things like that. And the outcome to that would be people would have more initiative, and it'd create a stronger culture, and people would collaborate more, and you'd have a more engaged team. And that's all I have.
Yeah, and then I'm not going to take up too much time. My stress tolerance was absent when I was speaking, and I completely forgot to talk about the bias that an American might bring to the documentary. And so what I saw the most prevalent was the Soviets being the machine and us being the underdog. So you could view it as a David versus Goliath-esque story, and that's how it's kind of described in all retellings of the 1980 Olympics. So yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there. Thanks and gig 'em.
Thanks and gig 'em.
That was still like 15
Yeah.
minutes, I'm pretty sure.
Hey, hey.